Hey, what's up, masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. This week we are with Mr. Tim Brown. What's going on, Tim Brown? How are you?
Fantastic, sir. How about yourself?
Dude, life's good. Life's good. That's all I can tell you, man. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, things are great. And you and I, ironically, it's good to see you. Good to meet you. We've hung out a few times, but through X, we really haven't. This is the first time we've really probably. I've actually seen you. I don't know if you've seen me, maybe, but yeah, it's cool. It's good to meet you in person.
Yeah, you as well. And I love that we get to do things like this. You have those conversations on X and just social media in general, and how it has opened so many doors for people to connect. And the sky is the limit with what those relationships can become. So I'm glad to be able to meet you like this as well. So thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, absolutely. And so you help people with speaking, public speaking, speak with confidence. Tell me the name of your company again. I just want to make sure I say it right.
Let's confident speaking. Yep. So
Confidence
it's the
speaking.
confident speaking community.
Okay, beautiful. And yeah, I mean, every time I've heard you on X, like I said, we just met each other, but I've heard you over the last 4 weeks and very impressed with you. So I'm like, man, I want to have this guy on my podcast. So thank you again. So how'd you get started with public speaking or just speaking in general?
Well, I would say speaking started because I was teaching
Born?
at my church.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
that's I think that may be where a lot of it started.
Yeah.
But I started thinking back as I, do an outline for my life. And I remember that I used to do radio announcements at my church when I was in high school at one point in time. I think I was in the maybe ninth grade, eighth grade. So I was doing radio announcements for the church. So I've done some speaking here and there through the years, but teaching is the part that really excites me. And it's the,
Mm,
the communication piece that I'm really excited about. Not just the public speaking, because I know in the beginning it took a while for people to understand that the confident speaking community isn't just about doing a presentation. It's about understanding how to have those interactions with people, because there are a lot of people that will never stand behind a podium in their lifetime. They may never stand in front of an auditorium of people or in front of a bunch of board members, but most every person is going to speak to an interviewer. They're going to speak to a supervisor. They're going to speak to a family member or a friend. And it's important that they understand how to communicate to people in those different environments. And that's what the confident speaking community is all about, becoming more
What?
confident and effective communicators.
Yeah, and how does somebody become part of that community if they're interested?
So they can join us online on X. So that's where a lot of the live sessions come or happen, where anyone can join on X. My profile is at Simply Tim TV on X,
Okay.
and I post the new link for each space that's going to be happening every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And anyone is welcome to join. Anyone is welcome to come in and participate, because the space really doesn't work unless people get involved. It's all about being intentional and taking action. And the space is an interactive conversation that we have where we challenge one another. We share ideas like you've done when you've come into the space. And we're just there to grow together and be supportive of one another so that we all figure out just how to be better in life for ourselves, for our family, and anyone that we may be around.
And why was it important for you to like? Why did you start that space? What was the purpose behind that?
The purpose of the space was, well, I'll start just being on X to begin with. At the time, it was still Twitter. And I've had an account since 2013. My wife created the account for me, and I didn't use it because I didn't really get excited about social media too much. But I wanted to learn about crypto. And a friend of
Mm,
mine was talking about crypto, and he shared some things with me. And I realized that I could learn a little bit through Twitter. There were a lot of people that were sharing a lot of information, conversations that were happening. So that's what got me involved on Twitter. It was to try to learn about crypto. And not too long after Twitter introduced spaces, So then not only was I able to read about crypto, I was able to have conversations with people to listen in on crypto. And eventually, there's only so many cookies you want to eat. And I had enough crypto. So I decided, you know what, let me see what else is going on out here. There've got to be some other conversations outside of crypto.
Mm.
So I decided to engage in other spaces where they talked about mental health, wellness. They talked about people that have special abilities, that I learned is a better way of saying disabilities, but just different types of spaces because I enjoy meeting people. And it was a great opportunity for me to just expand, I wouldn't say my reach, but to expand my understanding of people. And as a result of that, I decided that, you know what? There's a lot of conversations going on, and I saw it as an opportunity for me to be able to make my own contribution. I tried to contribute in other people's spaces, but I realized there were conversations I could have myself that I could facilitate and actually make a contributions to people's lives. And that's what I decided to do. And my wife said, you know what? I think you could help people overcome their fear of public speaking. And that was the initial thought, to help people overcome their fear of public speaking. And after doing a couple of those spaces, 2, 3 maybe, I realized, you know what? How many conversations can we have about overcoming the fear of public speaking? So I started thinking.
Did you have a fear of public speaking? Did you have that you overcame, or is it just like, is that close to you?
For me, I wouldn't really say it was. In college, I enjoyed it. If we had to do a presentation, I raised my hand to go first. I'll be the first one to kick it off. So I wasn't really afraid of it, but she had a fear of public speaking. And we know a lot of people do. And it's one of the top 3 things that people are afraid of in life is public speaking. But as I did that a few times, I decided that I needed something that was a little more broad, because I couldn't think of enough topics to facilitate ongoing conversations about overcoming the fear of public speaking. And I thought about my experiences. I teach personal development classes, do counseling with couples, premarital counseling. So all of that culminated into the idea that I can help people understand how to communicate. And I wanted something broad enough to be able to have some extensive conversations over time, because I didn't want to do it just once or twice or for a month and just disappear. It was an opportunity for me to really be in a position to make a contribution into people's lives. And that's something that I'm very big on. If I'm not contributing to other people's well-being or their success, my life doesn't feel like it's really moving forward the way that it's supposed to. So this was a great opportunity for me to do that. And confident speaking came to mind. It was a broad enough topic that I could brand the space and the community, but then it encapsulated public speaking. It encapsulated overcoming the fear of speaking. It also captured the idea of just communication in general. No matter what you're speaking about, confidence needs to be a part of it if anyone is going to believe what it is you have to say. And it begins with being confident in yourself. And that's what I try to focus on with the confident speaking community.
Awesome. I'm going to get into that in a few, like what it does take to be confident at speaking. I'm curious though. I kind of get the sense that if you're probably more of an extrovert, I'm an introvert, than an extrovert. Is that accurate?
It's very accurate. Very accurate.
So how does somebody that's an introvert, like, because you show up, you speak, you share, how does somebody if somebody else is like that? And because I know a lot of people that won't speak just because they're like, oh, I'm introverted, I don't want to say anything, I don't feel comfortable, right? So how do you help somebody in that situation?
Well, we talk about, and we've done it in the space, talk about what being an introvert is, and that it isn't something that people should use as an excuse not to position themselves to be able to speak and be confident in themselves. It's a matter of how you navigate those interactions with people. It doesn't mean that you can't speak, that you don't have the ability to do it. It's just the way your mind processes those interactions. And it can be draining when you think about having to have conversations with a lot of people, being in front of a crowd, and it can weigh on you mentally. So for me, if I go to a football game, I'm already thinking, all right, we're going to leave at the end of the third quarter so we can beat the crowd trying to get out. I don't get excited about the crowds, and it does weigh on you. But I like to help people understand that whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there's also an omnivert and an ambivert. So many of us will operate in both realms. We kind of fluctuate along those scales depending on the need and the circumstances we find ourselves in. But when people are able to figure out what they have on the inside of them and learn to believe in who they are and what they have the ability to do, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, they will have the ability to be confident speakers and communicators, no matter what environment they're in.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if somebody's confident in what they have to share, it's actually going to help them be a better speaker and be more confident speaking, right? And I think that's in some of us, but there are people that are very confident in what they know and what they do, but yet they're still scared to speak and share it. What causes that?
It's, for some, it's pride, and they're more concerned about people's opinions and perspectives about them, or there may be some aspect of that environment they aren't comfortable with. And I believe we have a tendency that when we are in the presence of people that we admire or people that we have a level of respect for, regard, and feel like they're more knowledgeable than we are, it can make us hesitant to speak up and share what's on our mind and in our hearts, because we feel like it won't be able to add value. And with our space and community, I help people understand that what you have to say is valuable. If it's important to you, it probably will be important to someone else. And we never know how much of an impact we can have on someone's life when we share the things that are in our heart. And that's what I think it is. It's the comparisons we make with other people. We compare ourselves and we don't feel like we add up. And we're concerned about whether or not we're going to look good in front of people. So we don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to look bad. And we're afraid of that. A lot of people are.
Well, so I'm reading John Maxwell's book right now. I think it's the 15, John's got so many books. The
Laws of Communication.
21 laws. Yeah, is that it? 15 Laws of Communication. Yeah, great book. So actually, I think it's his most recent book, to be honest with you. I was at an event and we pre-ordered it. But fantastic. And he keeps coming back to that being one of the most important elements of speaking, is making it about the other person. Not about you, right? Like, how do you have to figure out, like, it's not about me, it's about them, serving them, helping them, right? Like, is that kind of like what's on your mind too? It's not, who cares like what I say? I mean, yeah, I want to be good. I want to be clear. I don't want to have tons and tons of filler words and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's helping the other person.
Right. And I think that's important especially when people are trying to figure out how to manage the fear or the nervousness. Because I don't believe that you can ever overcome the fear per se. And when we think about the fear aspect of it, what degree of fear are you dealing with? And the butterflies that most people experience at some point in time are natural, they're normal, and they're also unpredictable. You don't really know when those butterflies are going to show up. And for me, they're just a great reminder that this is a serious moment. No matter what I'm speaking about, no matter how many people are listening to what I have to say, they've given their time to listen to the things that I'm going to share. So it's a responsibility, and there's an opportunity to influence people's lives in a positive way. So focusing on the task at hand, the mission, the goal, and what you can accomplish by sharing your thoughts with people allows you to not focus on the idea that I may mess up and they may laugh at me, or they may not want me to come back. Instead, choose to focus on how many lives you can change and how someone is going to be inspired. Look at the smiles that are in the audience, the hand claps that come up, and just feed off that and continue to grow and just keep going.
Yeah, such an important point to just figure out how to serve other people, right? I mean,
Right.
sales. I teach salespeople how to be more effective with sales. Same thing. I
Mhm.
mean, it's make it about the other person, solve a problem, right?
Right.
What are some of the things that you would recommend our listeners? Like, if someone's like, "Wow, man, I want to get better at more confident at speaking." Do you have like, let's
Mhm.
like three, like the three things? Just like, oh, here's where to start. Do you have like your top three?
Okay. My top three, the first one would be is to become intentional. They have to be intentional about becoming a better speaker and
Mm,
developing that confidence because confidence is the result of a track record of successes. That's my definition. It's the result of a track record of successes. And the more risks you take, the more times you position yourself to speak, to have those engagements, and to challenge yourself, the confidence is going to grow because you
mm,
realize that you don't lose friends because you say things, you don't get fired because you express your thoughts and opinions in different environments. And we have to understand that there's the things that we're afraid of really aren't anything to be afraid of. And being intentional forces us to position ourselves to take those risks. We look for those opportunities to get better. And the second thing I would say is to understand the idea of conciseness. And I think a lot of people get themselves in trouble when they're trying to be confident speakers and communicators because they don't understand how to be concise. And
mm,
when you develop the ability to be concise, you learn how to say what's most important without taking a long time to say it. And what I find with a lot of people, they spend a lot of time trying to say something they could have shared in 2 or 3 sentences, but it's because they are nervous. They don't really have the confidence in the idea they want to share. So they
mm.
feel like they have to layer all these words and extra thoughts on top of something that could have been simple to convince people that what they said was valid. And confidence tells you that if it's only 2 sentences to make my point, there's only 2 sentences, and I'm comfortable with that, and we can move on. So, intent, conciseness, and it's the practice. There is no magic pill to become a better speaker or communicator. We have to do it. And the intent requires practice to take the time to work on your ideas, on your thoughts. I mean, I still practice to this day with your
Mm.
friends when you have conversations. Be mindful of the things that you want to improve. Be mindful of those lazy words we may use when we get around our friends, where we start cutting things off that we may not cut off when we're in a business environment. Those are opportunities to practice. If you have something you can record, go back and listen
Let
to
me
it.
pause for a minute. So, give us an
Yes.
example of the lazy words you just mentioned, because you said we may cut them off when we're with friends. What is it? Give us an
There,
example of
there,
that.
there's certain terms when we get around our friend. I'm trying to think of a specific word, but I think anyone that does it, they know when there's certain terms they may not use. Just think about when you write text messages, the way we just throw all grammar to the wind and
Mm.
we abbreviate things. And in those interactions with friends, we may, okay, I'm trying to think of a good example now because I try not to do it myself. And that's why I'm stuck with a specific example. It may
So are
come
you
to me.
saying kind of communicate when you're with your friends and you're, chilling in your jogging suit, you're going to communicate the same with the same effectiveness as when you're in a group of
Yeah,
people in one of your in one of your rooms?
yes, when I'm trying to be intentional about refining that skill, because you may not have a lot of other people where you have the opportunity to practice that way. So
Mm.
if it's with friends where you have those additional opportunities to have those conversations and interactions, absolutely use them to practice and refine. If we don't, what we do is we run the risk that when we're in an environment where we need to be at our best, we may feel a little lazy once we get comfortable with the audience or the listeners, and we may find ourselves accidentally reverting to what we may do at home or what we may do amongst our friends and peers. And that's why for me, I would much rather stay sharp as much as possible so that it becomes a part of who I am and that I don't have to necessarily try to get myself geared up to put on my best when it's time to show up. So that's part of being intentional.
Got it. So the three are become intentional, understand conciseness, and practice. Were those are the three?
Yes, those are three that I'd say would be very beneficial.
Okay, amazing. By the way, we've got probably close to 50 people listening in right now, which is great between Clubhouse and the other apps. So if anybody online has a question for Tim, just drop it in the chat. If you're on X or if you're on YouTube or our Facebook community, drop it in the chat and I'll ask him. And then if you're on Clubhouse, if you're on Clubhouse, just raise your hand. I'll bring you up and you can ask a lot. We got a lot of people. Wow, we got a lot of people on Clubhouse, man. These people like this conversation, man. I don't know if we've ever had. We probably got like 70 people on here, man.
Oh wow, nice.
That's awesome. So
Hello,
if
Clubhouse.
anybody has a question, we did so much on Clubhouse, man, during COVID. Like a lot of us were here every day, all day, and then I've kind of, I'm obviously back to work. I'm not spending as much time as I was, but still a great community there, man. Look at all the people in here right now. It's cool.
Wow. I guess I need to try to get over there at some point just to try it again and have some conversations.
We should collaborate and do something. Like, I don't think there's anything like that over there, and it's nice. What you're doing on X too is different because, when I went over to X, I struggled a little bit because most stuff was crypto, like you said earlier, which I'm also interested in crypto. By the way, Bitcoin hit like 47 today. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I saw that.
It's exciting to me. But it would be politics or news, and it's like I have zero interest in, nor do I even have the skills or capacity to really talk about that at a super intelligent level. Nor do I want to learn it, at this point. So it's just not my jam. So it was nice to see your space, your space. And there's other spaces like that, now that I've met some of the people like Donica and some of the others that run these kinds of spaces. So that's super, super cool. Tell people about your space and when do you guys do your rooms? And if people want to follow you on X, how do they do that?
So they can follow me it's at Simply Tim TV. That's my profile name on X. That's it on Instagram. What else? Well, I don't really use the other platforms that much because the audience is primarily at X. So that's where I've been focusing at this point. I may start doing some on YouTube, some live, but still at Simply Tim TV on YouTube as well when I start using that. But it's Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And it's pretty much every Saturday unless something comes up. But it's rare that something happens that I don't still do the space. I mean, last weekend, I was out of town and I still did my space. I even took some of my gear with me so I could still have it because I enjoy it that much. And when we think about being intentional, that's intention, that I really want to be there to be able to have that impact and create those opportunities for people. But I always pin a post to my profile. So every week, they can always see what the topic is or have the link to the next space for the upcoming Saturday. So it's very easy to find if they're on X to be able to get in touch with the space. But on my website, there's information on there, some practice exercises as well. And with the space, what we do in there is very interactive. And we have, like most spaces, there are people from around the world that are trying to figure out how to refine their communication skills. Some of them aren't native English speakers, so it's a great opportunity for them to practice their English while also sharing their thoughts and perspectives about the topics we may be discussing on any given Saturday. And one of the things that I love about it, and as a result of those spaces, because I ventured out from crypto and I enjoy meeting people,
Do you have
is
crypto? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. you
say that again.
do you have crypto, or do you have
I
like
do.
some?
I do. I do.
Uh,
I have some. I have some. I don't dig into it like I used to anymore at all. Yeah, after 2022, I
yeah.
think, and the early 2023, that's when I was like, you know what? I have a few things that I'm holding. In my mind, they're functional projects that have the capacity to actually be businesses and not just projects. Just the idea of calling it a project says to me they don't plan to be around very long anyway.
Hmm.
So I looked at the ones that look like real businesses that I'm holding, and I keep my eye on it every now and then to make sure they haven't made some changes, and I lose my coins because I wasn't looking and they made a pivot on me. But
Yeah.
that's pretty much where I am with that.
So sorry to move you,
Now you good.
distract, but I mean, I honestly, X got me into it,
Mhm.
following Gary Cardone, and then being part of the Bitcoin. There's a big daily Bitcoin room. I had Craig was on here actually last week. Good
Uh-huh.
guy. He's got, I don't know if you're familiar with his room, the Bitcoin Daily Show, I think they call it.
I think I've
Good
seen.
guy.
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah, good guy. And so I jumped in at 32. It's at
Mhm.
47 now, so I'm not complaining.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, that's we can do another show on crypto. I've been doing crypto since 17, but I never bought Bitcoin up until
Oh
4 months
wow.
ago.
Wow.
So I always had ETH and XRP and other stuff. But
Okay.
all right. So but back to the speaking, and by the way, I'm going to see if anybody on Clubhouse has questions. Feel free, raise your hand. Love to hear from you guys. Tim's happy to answer questions. And I also dropped my link at the top there. If I'm David I. Hill on X, so let's connect on X as well. And I follow Tim, and I'm in his spaces as well, so we can certainly connect that way. So Tim,
And David, if you don't mind, and I will say to the listeners, as David said, don't be afraid to ask the question, because I'm sure if you have a question to ask, you aren't the only one. And this is one of those opportunities to just learn to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's one of the things that we focus on in our space, is getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So I encourage people to come up and speak. We want them to be able to make incremental progress. It isn't about perfection. So even if someone doesn't actually speak, and they request to be a speaker, because that's terrifying for some people, just the idea that they see the word speaker under their name. So I always challenge people to take baby steps. Don't worry about how big they are. Don't worry about messing anything up, because I do it. I even created a recording of myself just totally hay baling and messing up some things that I was trying to say. It was recorded. So I took a snippet and I posted it as a tweet on X, just so people could understand that it's okay if we make mistakes. We don't have to be ashamed or afraid of the mistakes. That's how we get better. We get to learn from those moments. And I just try to be that encouragement for everyone to understand that it's okay. Take the risk, ask the question, and we're here for you every step of the way.
well, you just encouraged somebody on Clubhouse to raise their hand, so we'll see. We got Roderick, I think, if I'm saying it right, raised his hand. So, do you have a question for Tim?
Yes, sir. Tim, how you doing? God bless you. I'm a preacher. I'm an evangelist, and I prepare my messages throughout the week. But I think one of my worst habits is that I make my points extremely long. And you said something that caught my attention. That those that make points that are long, it means that they actually have no confidence in what they're saying. So my question is to you, brother. Shouldn't I shorten my point in my messages to regurgitate more confidence as I'm speaking? Thank you for your
Thank you for the question, Roderick. Great question.
So on my end, it was hard to hear him, but I think I caught the tail end of the actual question, where he was asking, should he shorten what he wants to say to be able to express it more
So,
clearly?
So yeah, I think, did you catch what he said? He's a preacher, and he says sometimes he feels like he goes on, like you talked about it earlier. Sorry if you couldn't hear it. I've got my volume up pretty high, but he said based on what your message, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you were saying, but he said based on what you said earlier about just adding a lot of extra stuff, it's a lack of confidence. So he was asking if he should be shortening his message, and I'll even throw in what would be some strategies you could give to him and maybe other people that are dealing with the same thing.
Well, to answer that, especially with him being a pastor, I would say that we have to always be mindful of our circumstances. There may be times where you need to share a little more than normal. If it's a casual conversation, or you're responding to a question in a meeting, or you're sharing a point in a meeting, then you don't want to take 5 minutes to express one thought that could have been summarized very easily or quickly in 2 or 3 sentences. But if you're the pastor of the church and you're delivering a sermon, then you may want to use more than one example and express it in different ways to make sure that everyone is able to understand the message and the point behind what it is that you're saying. So just be mindful of your circumstance, the environment, and what the expectation may be. In a sermon, I think people understand that. It may be a little more explanation and clarification that you're providing to make sure they understand it, because everyone learns differently. And when we think about trying to teach something scripturally, it doesn't always resonate with everyone when you just give one direct point from scripture. And I think back to John 3:16, where it said, God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall be saved. And I looked at that scripture for years, watching sports for years and years. And it wasn't until I ended up at a church where he taught in a manner that it made sense to me. So understand it's circumstantial when you do it, but at least have the ability to be concise and refine your thoughts so that you can do it as quickly as possible when you have to, because you don't want to be in a position where you need to be brief and you don't know how to be brief. That's the bigger point.
How about preparation though, right? Like what comes to my mind is preparation as you're prepping to give a sermon, or right, like even like a talk. Never mind, it's just a sermon, but like
Right.
how much preparation are you putting in? Like let's take let's say you're doing a 20-minute talk or a sermon. How much preparation would you put into that?
And I don't want to tell anyone that there's a one way to do it. Everyone is different. Some people have the ability to understand their topic and they can go and speak for 20 minutes because that's just the way they flow. But for me, I like to understand, what's the point of my message? What points within that message do I want to deliver and make sure that people understand? And I'm not a huge note person. And I know I've seen, just say, for instance, with the pastor, some pastors have something written out and they have everything scripted. For me, I write down my bullet points, and I might put something that gives me an indication as to where I need to go and how I want to follow along and flow within that. But it's based on spending the time with my message and making sure that you understand what your message is. It isn't enough to just have bullet points, but those bullet points need to resonate with you and understand why you're giving those bullet points, how you're going to help people understand those bullet points, and then practice how you're going to present those bullet points. So out loud is good. So you have a feel of the flow. It gives your brain an opportunity to process what you may say next, how you may say it, how you may want to change your approach with certain aspects of what it is that you're trying to say. So it goes back to the practice, and doing it out loud is very helpful. If once you have your outline of what you want to say, or however you choose to do it, if it's completely written, read it out loud and practice it until it feels comfortable to you. And don't even expect that it feels perfect to you as you're practicing, but as long as you practice it enough, it gets locked into your heart. and you understand it, and it becomes important to you, and it becomes a part of who you are. And I think that's what's really important, is that you take it in and you connect with it.
Yeah, really, really good, man. First, I just want to say thank you for coming in today and doing this. I thought it's great. It's a lot of really good information here for people. You know, well, you know, I know last week I was at your show last week, and I gave the example from one of my mentors. His name's Joe Weldon. He talks about, you know, speaking is like bringing people on a bus. Like you're the bus driver, right? To the Roderick, as the pastor of the church, you're driving the bus. People get on the bus and they're expecting to go at a certain destination. And then if you tell them the bus is going to Logan Airport, but you know, you start driving and you take a right and you go this way and then you go this way, and right, and then people are getting confused, and then it doesn't make sense, especially if someone's getting on the bus to go somewhere specific, right? If they come to a talk, which is even, maybe you could get away with that even being a preacher or a pastor, but if somebody comes to a talk on a specific topic and the speaker's bringing them all over the place, it's confusing, and that doesn't work. So think about yourself as a bus driver.
The bus driver. And I love it. I love that. And I know for pastors how it can get a little tricky, because you get caught up in the spirit and things just start flowing. But when that happens, there's really not much you can do about that. But I think we know the difference, though. You know the difference when it's God saying, this is where you need to go, this is what you need to be doing in this moment, versus when we aren't totally comfortable with what we've presented and we feel like it isn't enough. And that's where, when you spend the time with it and it resonates with you in your heart, you know that when you've said what you need to say, you can comfortably move on, because that's the message that needs to be delivered. And those that have an ear to hear will hear it, and they'll receive it.
Great points today, my man. I appreciate you being on the show again. Let everybody know best way again. I know we've said it a couple times, but as we're wrapping up now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to reach me is they can catch me on Twitter or X, and the profile name is @SimplyTimTV, @SimplyTimTV, or they could also visit the website, which is confidentspeaking.us. confidentspeaking.us. So those are the best two places to be able to catch me.
Awesome. And your show is on Saturdays at 11 Eastern.
At 11 a.m. Eastern.
PM Eastern. Oh, yeah. You're right.
Yes, 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah. And then and how the show, how long does the show go for? Like, you guys go for hours, right? Sometimes 5-6 hours?
Yes, we begin at 11. The goal is 1:30, but we have a tendency to not end until about 2 o'clock, maybe a couple minutes after 2 o'clock. But they can expect that we'll be there from 11 to 1:30. So about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Yeah, it's got it. But I know you guys have gone longer than that. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, in the beginning, when I first started doing that, it would be 4.5, sometimes 5 hours. But I mean, once you get in there, people start coming in at different times. You hit certain time zones. So now people are awake in different parts of the world, and they may be coming in from somewhere. And I just noticed that would happen, that there would be a completely different crowd at a certain time frame. And you want to accommodate everyone because you want people to be able to grow and get the information. But I realized that we had to let them use the recording and trust that they were going to grow from that, or be able to join us while we were actually going between 11 and 1:30, because it's a lot. It's draining. It takes a lot out of you to be on there that long, because for me, the level of focus to be able to listen to everyone, to understand what everyone is saying, and then try to pour into them something of value, it can take a lot out of you. So the 4 and 5 hours, it was too much. It was too much.
So I get one more question. It's kind of on my mind. I noticed as you run that room, you're very patient in the way you let people just kind of keep going, right? Like in the clubhouse days, we used to have this term like land that plane, right? You know what I'm talking, like let's land. But I've noticed in some of your spaces, people will go on. How do you know when, like, I'm just kind of curious. How do you know when to say, okay, that's kind of enough, or
Right.
you just let it go? Like, how does somebody get good at that?
Well, for me, which is one of those things that I try to help people understand, is learning to hear the things that aren't said and being able to be attentive to those moments as they change. The people that have been coming for a while, they understand that conciseness is a big part of what we try to do. And you may notice that some of the ones that are really comfortable in the space, they don't take as long because they understand that we're trying to be intentional about that. So I can always tell when someone is new to the space because they will have a tendency to do that. The way that they speak is different, and you can tell that they haven't become intentional at that point yet, but also what's going on in someone's heart. So allowing people to express something that's near and dear to their heart is more important than confining them to a certain amount of time in the space. So I'm very cognizant of that as well. When I can feel someone's joy. I can feel when someone is struggling with something. I feel it. It's like there's a visceral effect that I have or experience when that goes on. So I give them that additional room to express themselves because, again, sometimes sharing something with people can change their life, but also taking the time to listen to someone can change their life as well. Everyone doesn't have someone that's willing to give them a listening ear when they're in a time of need. So it's something that we begin to recognize, but we have to want to understand that. And that's how being a confident and effective communicator allows us to really thrive and navigate those different types of situations because we're paying attention to the details to make those judgment calls.
I'll give that one an amen, man. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, final thoughts, man. Just appreciated having you here today. A great conversation. Excited to listen to it again. For people listening in, you can go to you can find Tim on every Saturday on X at the name of the space is Confident Speaking.
Yes, confident speaking. Yep,
Yep.
it's the confident speaking community, but confident speaking. If they go to my profile, it's always pinned on my profile.
Yeah, awesome. Definitely a great space. I make sure I pop in there myself. And so anything I didn't ask like that you wanted me to bring up, or what did I miss?
Well, I would just say to everyone, as we close, is to not be afraid of the mistakes and find people that will encourage you and support you on that journey. A cactus can't grow in the pond, just like a lily pad can't grow in the desert. So we have to find the right environment in order to thrive. And sometimes that means stepping away from people that you've known for a long time because they aren't supportive of the journey that you're on to try and grow. And we have to decide, am I more concerned about my growth and development or about having certain people around that are only hindering me from moving forward? And I remember that Warren Buffett told a group of students when he spoke at a commencement, he said that learning to be a good communicator can increase your earning potential by 50%. And when you think about it, a lot of people want to know that they have someone that can communicate. Who's going to trust you to go try and land a big deal if you don't have the ability to communicate well? Who's going to hire you if you don't have the ability to communicate what you have to offer the organization? Who wants to marry you if you can't communicate your value to them as a spouse or someone that they can trust, share their feelings with? So communication is so important for us. And that's why the confident speaking community for me is so important and so valuable for people that come and get involved, become intentional, learn how to be concise, and they're willing to practice and do the work because there is no magic pill to be a good communicator.
Beautiful, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.